All right. And welcome back to another episode of the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. And of course, next to me is my beautiful co host, Laraib. And we are ready to dive into another great week of NFL football. Week 3 action coming to you. Laraib, before we hit on that, I kind of wanted to hit on some of the Monday Night Football action. So we really never talk about Monday Night Football because we film before that on Mondays and we drop our episodes on Tuesdays. But if it's a really good game or something happens that's exciting, we want to talk about it. We'll use this segment before our picks to discuss and kind of review what happened in those games. At least for me, the teams I said. So you picked the Vikings, I picked the Eagles, and we both
Oh,
picked the Bills. So of course, upping my win total didn't really change anything for the week. But there's not much. I say the Eagles look very impressive. I think if they can continue, Jalen Hurts looked really impressive in that game, especially. I think their defense showed up a lot more. Darius Slay balled out against Justin Jefferson and that passing offense. But I mean, the Bills trounced the Titans. Titans look very disappointing. But we'll get into all these teams. Laura, did you want to hit on any of these games?
just Kirk Cousins in prime time, never again. Not for me.
No, no.
But we'll talk about the Vikings and some of these other teams later on, Lewis. But let's get into the Week 3 predictions from the First and Goal podcast. Starting off with your New Orleans Saints going to Carolina to play the Panthers. Let's see who was favored in this game, Lewis.
Saints by 3.
Saints by 3. Interesting. We're talking about the Saints last week. They played divisional rival Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week, and we saw what happened. A lot of fights in that game. Mike Evans is suspended. Lattimore could have potentially been suspended. But after that bad loss, Lewis, what do the Saints have to do to get back this week?
Uh, Definitely just getting back into an offensive rhythm. Not really saying that there was a rhythm that was ever established besides a crazy fourth quarter in Atlanta. This offense has been really struggling this year. And of course, not having your best offensive player in Alvin Kamara does hurt that. And I think, was the game have been different against Tampa? Maybe. Mark Ingram did fumble in the red zone situation. So if the Saints score there, who knows what could have happened. But I think in this game against Carolina, the Saints offense is really the X factor in this game. I think if they play well enough, they can win this game because of how discouraged I've been of this Carolina Panthers offense, which I thought was going to perform very well this season. With you get an upgraded quarterback in Baker Mayfield. I think we can all say he's an upgrade over Sam Darnold.
I mean, it
And
doesn't look like it at this point.
that's the thing. I mean, DJ Moore was amazing last year and he's just not getting the production. Christian McCaffrey hasn't been putting up, a vintage Christian McCaffrey games. And we have to start saying vintage now because he's starting to get up there in years and rack up those injuries. You never know when he's going to combust. And the fact that they have attempted the third least amount of passes in the NFL this season, only ahead of the 49ers and Bears, who played in a monsoon week 1. It says a lot about this team. And Bob McAdoo is the offensive coordinator, which I don't know how he got hired again for an NFL position as like an offensive coordinator after his last stint in New York. But it's really disappointing to see a team with all these weapons and improving on the offensive line to be struggling as much as they are. So I think the Saints defense should have a easy task on Sunday. But last year, the Saints went into Carolina early in the season and they lost pretty handily. So a divisional game on the road, it's hard for me to pick a favorite, but my bias might come in a little bit, and I'm gonna go with the Saints in this one. It's gonna be a low scoring game, probably one of the lower scoring games of the weekend. I'm gonna go Saints 27 or no 27. I'm gonna go Saints 21, Panthers 13.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. This is going to be a low scoring affair. But really for the Saints, this is going to be a big game for them to get back on track, like you were saying. We know the offensive weapons that they have in Michael Thomas. Chris Olave has really been standing out, and Jarvis Landry looks like he's been playing in New Orleans his whole career. And so for them, just keep on clicking on offense. And we saw Jameis had some bad interceptions last week. So let's see if he can get right against this Panthers team, which really isn't that good. So I'm going to agree with you. I'll take the Saints in this one. Low scoring affair for a divisional game. Give me the Saints 24-20.
All right, moving on now. We have the Houston Texans traveling to Chicago Bears in one of the most exciting matchups of the entire weekend. Bears favored by 2.5 at home. Larab, in this game, the two sophomore quarterbacks, one significantly more hype than the other, who outplays who, and is that going to determine who wins this game?
Yeah, for sure. I think whichever team can win over the turnover battle is going to come out victorious in this one. And I like Davis Mills to be that guy in this game. This Texans team, they've stayed in games with some competent teams. I know the Colts. We at this moment we don't see them as that competent, but maybe later on in the season, they become who we expect them to be. But staying in against that Colts team, they're up 20-3. And they're playing against this Broncos team, which we know really, they're struggling and also trying to build some of that chemistry. But you still talk about the weapons that they have offensively. And this Texans team was able to slow them down a little bit, not able to get that win. But playing against this Bears offense, which look horrendous, I think they definitely have an opportunity to come victorious in this one. And I like the weapons that they have. I like Dameon Pierce in this game, especially. We saw with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon did on Sunday night. So let's see if Dameon Pierce, the rookie, could come out and have some of those big games.
Yeah, for me, it really comes down to the two sophomore quarterbacks. And like you said, the turnover battle is going to be huge in this game. The game being in Chicago makes me want to lean Bears just because both the teams are really not that impressive so far. But like you said, this Texans defense has been really solid so far this season, holding to what we would say or what we think are good offenses. The Colts and Broncos aren't, we'll see. But definitely a lot better than what the Packers have shown us defensively in their first two games. So I think their defense can do a really good job against Chicago. My concern is it's in Chicago, and for the Bears, it's a mindset thing with a lot of these teams. When the Bears play the Packers, in their mind, when they go down a touchdown, that's game. Like it's hard to even not to think that. But in a game, both these teams have circled on their schedules as this is a winnable game. So I think the home game, a lot of fans are gonna be out there like, oh, we can watch the Bears win. Let's go, because this can be one of the few
Let's
games on
go
the
watch
season.
Sophomore quarterback Davis Mills. Yeah, it's gonna be an exciting one.
Yeah, you have the prospect of watching a Bears win. So with all that being said, I think that comes into play, home field advantage. I think Justin Fields, he makes a lot more mistakes than Davis Mills does, but he also makes those spectacular plays every once in a while that can either win or lose a game. And I think he pulls off spectacular plays in this one. I have the Bears winning another low-scoring game. Give me the Bears 20 to the Texans 18.
Yeah, quick note on Justin Fields. He's only completed 15 passes through two games. So I like the Texans D in this one, and I think they can come out on top. I'm going to take the Texans 19-16. All right, moving on to another game that we have on the 12 o'clock slate. We have the Las Vegas Raiders going to Tennessee to play the Titans. Titans coming off a short week, and they really have not been impressive at all this year, Lewis. I know a lot of you guys drafted Derrick Henry in your leagues, and he really hasn't performed as we expected him to be. And that might be him slowing down, or it might be them just playing two really good defenses. I liked what I saw of the Giants these past 2 weeks, and we know the Bills, what their front seven has turned into this season, and just how that team is competing all year long. So that might be the reason for this Titans offense to start off slow. We're playing against this Raiders team that shut out the Cardinals in the first three quarters, or first 2.5 quarters. Let's see if they can get something going against this Raiders defense, Lewis.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a Vegas trap by saying -2 here for the Raiders on the road, because earlier this week before the Monday night game, this was an even line, basically a pick 'em. But after the Monday night beatdown, a lot of people predicted that this game would probably lean into the Raiders' favor, and it has 2 points for the Raiders. But my thinking is, after watching how that Raiders team played on Sunday and just utterly collapsed, and yeah, the Titans got beat down too, but at least they never thought they were going to win it. It takes a really, really good coach to uplift a team and get them ready for that next week. And I don't think Josh McDaniel is that type of coach, but I know Mike Vrabel is that type of coach. I've seen things from Mike Vrabel for me to believe in him. And I think this Tennessee offense can get things going. Their lack of weapons on the outside definitely concerns me, but if there's ever a Derrick Henry bounce back game, it's definitely this game at home against the Raiders, noontime. I like the Titans in this one with the upset.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you. We saw what Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs did to this Titans secondary, and I think Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, and especially Devontae Adams can replicate some of that success in this game. And, both these teams are down 0-2, Lewis, in an AFC that we think is going to be really competitive this year. And so for either of these teams to come out with a victory is going to be crucial if they want to get into the playoffs. So I like the Raiders in this one. It's going to be a close game, but I think the Titans really, the defense has been lacking, the offense has been lacking, and Mike Vrabel by himself, he can't go onto the field and run any plays for them. So I like the Raiders in this one. It's going to be a tight game, but give me Las Vegas 27-24.
No, Mike Vrabel cannot go out there, but Derrick Henry can, and he's going to have a huge bounce back game. I believe in him, and I believe in this Titans team. I like their mettle coming off a huge loss. A lot of teams surprise and come back, and if you're sleeping on them, then that's at your fault. So I'm picking the Titans to win this one. Give me 28 to Raiders 27, and one of the probably the most entertaining games. Not the best teams, but definitely one of the more entertaining games of the weekend. But moving on, we have the Kansas City Chiefs traveling to Indianapolis to face the Colts. Kansas City, a 6-point road favorite. Laura, what do the Colts need to do in this game to even have a chance of defeating Patrick Mahomes?
Well, Lewis, if you go back in time, the last time that the Colts and the Chiefs played together, it was that Colts run game that kept Mahomes on the sideline and ran out that clock. That was a success for them for them winning that game. So I think it's gonna be more the same in this one. But the issue is this Colts offensive line really has not been who they were the past couple of seasons. We've seen Matt Ryan get sacked time after time. We've seen the run game really wasn't what it was last season. And so it's gonna. I know Matt Ryan is still trying to get incorporated into the offense, but they're gonna have their hands full against this Chiefs defense, which was the main reason why they won against the Chargers last week. I was really impressed by what they did against Justin Herbert at home. They were down 10 points, and they really, they were the reason with that pick six brought them back into the game, and then they just wouldn't let them back into the end zone. And so that Chiefs defense, they're starting to heat up a little bit, and I think they're gonna have a stellar performance against this Colts offense, which really hasn't been clicking.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here is who's going to be playing on the field for the Colts, and that's going to determine whether or not this game is competitive. Obviously, they did not have Michael Pittman, Shaq Leonard, Yannick Ngakoue. They did not have those guys against the Jaguars last week. And I think in order for this game to be competitive, they need all those guys to be suited up. And we saw a potential mismatch problem in that Thursday night game against the Chargers that the Chiefs had, in which Mike Williams, a big physical receiver, was just getting mismatched onto these smaller Chiefs corners, and the Chargers were able to kind of utilize that to their advantage. And in this matchup, if Michael Pittman is healthy, he is that big, strong receiver who you can throw those jump balls through those contested balls. And if they can get the running game going against this Chiefs defense, then they can get things going. But it's trusting Matt Ryan versus Patrick Mahomes at the end of the day. And this version of Matt Ryan, I think, is a far cry from his MVP seasons, undoubtedly. But I think it's a far cry from where he was last season, unfortunately. And if he can't be in the perfect situation, I just think he's a quarterback nowadays that he needs a perfect situation around him to be successful. And like you said, the offensive line has not really been what it's used to in the past. The defense really hasn't been as solid as we're used to seeing from Indianapolis. And Frank Reich is certainly on the hot seat. So it's a really tough challenge for them. But I have the Chiefs going in Indianapolis and winning this game. Give me Chiefs 31. Colts 17.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Patrick Mahomes really, he's on a mission this season. A lot of people were talking about the Ravens. They're talking about the Dolphins. They're talking about the Bills. And so Patrick Mahomes wants to be like, I'm still the top of the food chain here in the AFC, in the NFL. And so except for them to come out swinging in this one, I like the Chiefs 30-21. But moving on to another game, we have the stellar Buffalo Bills playing against a surprisingly sneaky Miami Dolphins team. What is going to be the success for Tua in this game against his Dolphins defense, against his Bills defense, which has been showing out early in the season?
So for Tua haters, this is a huge game because you're going to be on the edge of your seat, like myself. Like, oh, he can't do it again. I know he can't do it again. And for the Tua stands, they're going to be on the edge of their seat as well, saying, oh, here we go. Here the throw's about to come. It's about to get there. And this has been a tough matchup for the Dolphins since Tua has been the quarterback. Josh Allen and the Bills have always trounced this defense. It seems like, this Dolphins team is competitive in most games, but somehow they cannot figure out against Josh Allen. Really important stat to note, quarterbacks who the Dolphins have faced who had the letter O in their last name in the last 2 seasons, they have beaten. But if you do not have the letter O in your last name, like Josh Allen, they have lost all those games. Something definitely to look forward to in this matchup. Joking, obviously. But the big thing for me in this game is how can this young Bills secondary without Tre'Davious White, how can they hold up against this revamped Chiefs passing offense? And that's the biggest question, because we saw them cook the Ravens last week with Waddle and Hill, and last year they just didn't have that many explosive plays. The offensive line was a lot worse. But then again, this Bills pass rush is super effective. So I think if the Dolphins want any success, they need that offensive line to really shore up against this dynamic Bills pass rush, and we'll see what happens.
Well, Lewis, I think the key for me in this game is going to be that Dolphins defense, right? We talked about they won last week, but they give up 35 points to Lamar Jackson. We saw he had a huge run, he had a huge pass, and so that's what it's really going to come down to. Are they going to be able to stop Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs? Because if it comes down to the end of the day, Josh Allen versus Tua in a shootout, I have to go Josh Allen.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to pick. I think this is gonna be a really close game. I think this is gonna be a fun game. Coming off Monday night, a huge upset, or a huge blowout by the Bills. I think that they might be letting their foot off the gas, but this is a divisional game. They understand the importance of it. So I had the Bills winning a very exciting, high-scoring matchup. Giving the Bills 35, Dolphins 29. No, 30. 30. That's a weird score.
I'm really conflicted in this game, Lewis, because I have to pick an upset for the week, and I'm gonna say that the Bills come out and win this one, despite the short week.
Okay.
Despite the short week, Josh Allen is 7-1 versus Dolphins in his career, and I think he becomes 8-1 after this weekend. It's gonna be a really fun game to watch. But give me the Bills 30-24.
All right, moving on. We have the Detroit Lions traveling to Minnesota to face the Vikings. Vikings minus 6 points in this game. However, coming off a loss on Monday night against the Eagles. Laraib, how big of a difference is it to have Kirk Cousins in a noon kickoff versus Kirk Cousins in a Monday night football slate?
Oh, it's like day and night. I think the bright lights of after at night games for Kirk Cousins, the brights a little bit too light or
Really?
too bright for him. I think they crank up the settings on those lights at night, and they're just blinding him on those night games. But during the day, he's stellar. I know this is gonna be a dome game, but still, sunshine before he walks into the stadium are probably good. Some vitamin D for my boy Kirk Cousins. But this is gonna be a really fun game to watch, Lewis. No matter who wins this game, two really explosive offenses. The Lions are averaging 35.5 points per game this season, and so that's something to look at. And with Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift, they're always gonna be fun to watch. But I think it's gonna come down to this Vikings defense. They held the Eagles to only 24 points. I know that may seem like a lot, but holding that Eagles offense, which was rushing all over them, Jalen Hurts was throwing bomb touchdowns, and the Vikings offense just couldn't stay on the field, and that defense was on there all night. So only giving up 24 points, I think, is really impressive. And so going up against Jared Goff, I think they're gonna have some of that more of that same success. I know this Lions offensive line is really good, and so it's gonna come down to that pass rush. Can they disrupt Jared Goff and win this game?
The big thing for me in this game is this Lions defense, which had a really good performance against Carson Wentz. Aiden Hutchinson with 3 sacks against the Commanders last week. He looked like he's coming into his form as a rookie. And the back end of this defense has been, I think it has room to improve. It's still not much for me to think that they could handle an air raid against Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins. Solar Kirk, as I'm going to call him, because he plays a lot better when the sun is out. So Solar Kirk is going to go absolutely solar. But my thinking is this, out of all the teams who have played 2 weeks in the NFL, the Lions have the most offensive points, just only offensive points in the entire league. And that's saying a lot. This offense is improved. Jared Goff behind a competent offensive line can put up numbers. And this offensive line is far better than competent. They are elite. Amon-Ra St. Brown is elite. DeAndre Swift is elite. And they just have so much going for them right now that I really like the Lions to win an upset game. This game, it is in Minnesota, so it's kind of a risk to say this, but I did need an upset. And I think of all the teams that were upset, worthy, this is the best team. They have looked really good this season. And we saw against that Eagles team that the Vikings put 7 points up against. They put 5 times that amount of points up against. So give me the Lions in this one and a shocking upset. Kirk Cousins is going to be in the mud after this one. Give me the Lions. I'm going to go 28 to Vikings 23.
And I'm going to take the Vikings in this one. I just think their high-powered offense will finally get something going against this Lions defense, which only has one or two key players. So I like the Vikings 30-24. But moving on to another game that we have the Baltimore Ravens coming off that disappointing loss, going into New England to play the Patriots. Baltimore -3 in this one. And so I want to talk about this Ravens team real quick. Last week we saw Lamar Jackson put up 35 points on the Dolphins defense. We saw him rush and attack. We saw the passing attack. But what really impressed me was his throwing, right? His past couple of weeks, his throwing has been off the charts. We've seen him throw accurate touchdowns to Devin Duvernay, to Rashad Bateman, to Mark Andrews. And so I think that's what's going to be the key for them in this game against the Patriots defense, which really hasn't been tested all season.
You're right. I think as a NFL podcast host, you try to watch as many games as possible to get the information. But out of all the games last Sunday, the Patriots Steelers one was one I really didn't tune that much into. But looking over some of the stats, they did beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh, which is significant, and they did only let up 20 points to what might be considered a high-flying Miami offense in Miami. So this game is going to be a test for the Lamar Jackson Ravens, because 3 points, you seem like, oh, the Ravens should be a much bigger favorite because this Patriots team is, all the preseason stuff, and they're 1-1. I mean, and you're going to New England, a place where Baltimore has not been very successful the past few years. And yes, Lamar, he's very underrated MVP candidate, and it seems kind of wild to say underrated because he's been playing fantastic football. I do like the Ravens in this one, but it's going to be close, and it's going to come down to some Lamar magic at the end. I have the Ravens winning this one by a field goal. Give me Ravens 26, Patriots 24.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I just don't think that this Patriots offense really has anything it can put up against this Ravens defense.
But this Ravens defense is not that special, as we saw.
Well, when you're playing against two of the fastest players in the NFL, of course you're going to be beat over the top. When you're playing against guys with butterfingers like Nelson Aguilar and no-name guys like Devontae Parker, I think it's not going to be that tough of a task for them. So, I mean, it's going to be that Patriots defense that's going to be the difference in this game, but I think Lamar can pull it out. Give me the Ravens 24-17.
All right, and moving along with our noon slate, we have the Cincinnati Bengals traveling to the New York Jets. And if you had to guess which team had the better record, you're right. It's the Jets. The Bengals are favored by 5 points on the road. Laraib, at this point of the season, even though it's only been 2 weeks, is this a must-win game for the Bengals in that AFC?
Yeah, it definitely is. To go down 0-3 would be, almost a nail in the coffin for this Bengals team. When you're playing against this Jets team, which was lucky to have a win from last week, I think you go into New York and you have to put on a show here. We keep on talking about how their offensive line needs to build that chemistry and build it over and over. But Burrow has been sacked 13 times in the last 2 games, and that puts him on pace to be sacked over 100 times this season. I know that's not going to happen, but still looking at that sort of statistic, it kind of makes you open your eyes and see, this is really scary for this Bengals team if they want to go where they want to go this season. And so look for them to have a really good game. I like you saw what Nick Chubb did last week against his Jets team, having 3 touchdowns on the ground. And so look for Joe Mixon, right? Look for them to run the ball with him and set up that play action pass deep to Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I think you alluded to it, but the biggest thing in this game for the Bengals is they need to set the run, because the best way to alleviate pressure off your quarterback is getting the running game going, having that defense playing back, having less defenders in the box, or having more defenders in the box, focusing on the run. Then you have less pressure on your quarterback. So I think they need to establish a run. I think they can establish this run. This Jets defense under Robert Saleh has been playing very, very aggressive and a patient, constant running game with Joe Mixon, with Samaje Perine is the perfect answer to kind of whittle away against this Jets defense. Jets coming off a super exciting, unexpected win. I think going back home, Now, the Bengals do understand, like you were alluding to, the stakes of this game in this AFC, and losing this game can be a potential nail in the coffin in this crowded AFC. So you have to understand, you lost to them last year, and that was an upset. Coming back, you need to win this game. And in fact, I'll get to it, but I have the Bengals winning, and I have them winning big. But I have the Bengals winning this one 34 to Jets 13.
Yeah, for sure. I like the Bengals to put on a show in this one. I know Garrett Wilson. He had his coming out party last week against the Browns, catching 2 touchdowns. But this week, I think this Bengals defense can lock in on him specifically and take him out of the equation. And so, Bazooka Joe Flacco is going to have his hands
Oh, yeah.
full. Bazooka
Joe
Joe,
Flacco's the quarterback. I forgot.
MVP Bazooka Joe in this one. But I like Joe Burrow a little bit better than I like Bazooka Joe. So give me the Bengals 28-17. But moving on to another game, Lewis, we have your Philadelphia Eagles playing against your Washington Commanders.
Oof.
As a big fan of both of these teams, Lewis, which way are you leaning in this one?
It's tough because the line. So the Eagles are favored by 6.5 on the road, coming off a short week Monday Night Football game, and coming off a win. Spirits are really high. Playing the Commanders, who they just came off a loss, in which their offense had too many mistakes. You had a safety, an interception, but it's really hard for me. I think this could be a close game. It's hard for me to pick against the Eagles right now. I just think that offense has such a clear identity and such a great game plan for Jalen Hurts to succeed. My biggest concern with the Eagles is honestly going to come later in the season and playoffs when defenses have a lot of film on Jalen Hurts and can key in on the things he likes to do well. Because right now it seems like he's taking the league over by storm. He had the least amount of throws in the tight windows of any quarterback in the NFL so far, which means you're scheming things up for him. He's getting wide open looks. The running game is amazing. So it's hard for me to see this Commanders defense, who they've been playing well, but not well enough for me to think that they can quell this Eagles potent offense. And for the other side of the ball, I just think this Eagles defense really figured something out last week, sending heavy pressure. And Carson Wentz, I'm a big believer in him, but he's not a great quarterback against pressure. And if they send a lot of blitzes, and if they get down in this game, the Commanders, if they get down in this game, the Eagles can just send the house, get Wentz flustered, and if that leads to turnovers, this game could snowball really quickly. So I'm going to pick the Eagles in this one. It's going to be close. I think the Commanders still cover, but I'm going to go Eagles 28, Commanders 24.
Yeah, and that's the same exact score that I had, Eagles 28-24. But my favorite thing to look out for in this game is going to be Darius Slay against Terry McLaurin. That matchup is going to be something that I'm going to be keyed on all afternoon long, because we've seen Darius Slay what he did to Justin Jefferson this past weekend, and so to go up match up against Terry McLaurin, I think he's going to have it's going to be a fun battle to see. And Jahan Dotson, somebody who I have on my starting fantasy team, he's someone I'm going to be looking towards to excel in this game. He has 3 touchdowns in 2 games, a sneaky rookie of the year candidate, in my opinion. Also Curtis Samuel, not a lot of buzz about him, but he's also been racking up a lot of catches, a lot of yards. And so I think if they can get something going deep down the field, or even some of that rush attack going against this Eagles defense, they might have a chance. But we saw this Eagles defense was just suffocating the Vikings last week. They couldn't get anything going on the ground. They couldn't get anything going through the air. I think they're going to continue that success this Sunday. So I like the Eagles, just like you. It's going to be a little bit closer than Vegas thinks it's going to be. Give me the Eagles 28-24.
All right, I like that because it was my score. Good job cheating. All right, we're going to move along to the 3:00 games. We have first one, Jaguars going to Los Angeles to face the Chargers. Chargers 7-point favorites in this one. And that seems like a lot, because you think of the Chargers home games and you say, oh, it's a Chargers home game. Like, it's not going to be a Chargers home game because they don't have that many fans. But this might be one of the few visiting teams that probably doesn't travel very well. So they might have an advantage of fans in the stadium. Who knows? We'll see. But a lot of this game, honestly, is dependent on what does Justin Herbert look like after that Thursday Night Football beatdown he received by the Chiefs. Now, obviously, they played well. They came up short. He threw a pick 6. But the biggest thing was his rib health, and he was clutching his ribs. He couldn't even run late in that game. So if he's not playing, we're talking about a whole different football game. But we're going to assess this game as we think Justin Herbert is playing, and how active is he going to be. if we get 100% Justin Herbert, then bombs away. I still don't trust this Jaguars defense, even after shutting out the Colts last week. I just think for some reason that is the Colts' house of horrors, and they were missing a lot of players offensively. I get that. But this is a defense I still don't have faith in. So if Justin Herbert is him 100%, then this Chargers offense, expect a lot of fantasy players to have great games in this matchup.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm going to flip it over to the other side of the ball, Lewis. I really liked what that Chargers defense did against Patrick Mahomes early in that game on Thursday night. They really looked like they were going to be the reason that they were going to win that game, but that pick six from Justin Herbert really cost them. And so for this Chargers defense, I think, even with Justin Herbert hurt, it's going to be on them to limit possessions for this Jaguars offense, get some takeaways, get some sacks, and get some short fields for Justin Herbert, who we know is dealing with that rib injury. And so I like the Chargers in this one. Even if my boy Chase Daniel has to come in for one handoff or a couple of handoffs, I think this Chargers defense is going to be the X factor. And give me the Chargers 28-20. And also, it's an East Coast team traveling all the way to the West Coast, so we know how that can turn out for some of these games.
Yeah, that, and especially the Chargers coming off 10 days of rest. That's another thing. Thursday Night Football. This is going to be a big test for Trevor Lawrence, and I'm excited to see him, side by side with Justin Herbert, a player of similar physical talent, and we'll be able to see them in juxtaposition. And a lot of people are really high on Trevor Lawrence this season. I am one of them. And can he stack up to a potentially fully healthy Justin Herbert? We will see, but I think I have the Chargers winning this game. I don't think it's going to be very close. I think if Justin Herbert is healthy, the Chargers are going to win this game. I'm going to go 41 to Jaguars 23 in this matchup.
All right, but let's move on to another 3:00 game, Lewis. We have the Los Angeles Rams going to play the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona. The Rams are road favorite -3.5. But let's talk about this Cardinals team a little bit. Come back from a 20-0 deficit against the Raiders last week. But their offense has been lacking on all sorts of weapons. Obviously no DeAndre Hopkins, and they were really off to a bad start against that Raiders team overall. And so even with James Conner hurt, I think this is going to be a really tough battle for them. The Rams are 10-1 under Sean McVay, and so this is going to be a really tough test for the Cardinals. Both these teams 1-1, and so I don't know who to pick in this game, Lewis. What do you think?
Just for some context, when you said 10-1, you mean like 10-1 against the Cardinals in his career?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just making sure. Yeah, I think you have to kind of go history here, and this Rams defense has always played very well against Kyler Murray, because the biggest thing for the Rams, what they figured out, and a lot of teams, it's easy to say, but it's hard to do. But this Rams team has done a very good job of keeping Kyler in the pocket. You keep him in the pocket, and he kind of has that clock in his head where if he tries to escape, then there's a defender waiting for him. And this Rams defense, I think, with Aaron Donald getting that pressure up the middle and having two edges, because like what a lot of people think of a scrambling quarterback is, a defender's rushing the edge, I could just run around him and bootleg out of the pocket. But that's not necessarily the case. What a lot of scrambling quarterbacks do, the effective ones, is they step up into the pocket, and then if they don't see anything, they go in front of the edge defender and kind of hug the scrimmage line and look down the field for a potential explosive play before they run the ball. And Kyler Murray is great at that. Everyone thinks of him as a great runner, which he is, but he's also great outside of the pocket throwing the ball, and that's how he's very effective. But when you have Aaron Donald pushing that pocket back, it's just making that internal clock of his accelerate. We've seen a lot of defensive tackles be very effective against Kyler Murray in this offense. So I think for the Cardinals in this game is you need to find a way to get Matt Stafford off his place. If you want to have any success in this game, Matt Stafford is leading the NFL in interceptions, and he kept the Falcons in that game last week. We'll just call a spade a spade. If he doesn't make those mistakes, they cruise on. But I am picking the Rams in this game. They're going to be focused for this game. It's a divisional game. Give me the Rams in this game. I'm going to go Rams 31, Cardinals 21.
Well, I'm going to have to go in the opposite direction, Lewis. Like you were saying, Matt Stafford leads the league in interceptions. And so if this really bad Cardinals defense can get some turnovers, they can create some light for this Arizona offense. And like you're saying, Kyler Murray he's a magician in that pocket. So let's see what he can do against this Rams team, which still had to play some defense against the Falcons last week. And so this is gonna be a really tight divisional game. Both teams are gonna step up for this one, but give me the Cardinals in a tight one, 27-24.
Yeah, I just think it's tough coming off such an emotional and like far into the overtime game that the Cardinals were playing that they eked out based off of just kind of luck, honestly. If Renfro doesn't fumble and McDaniels just runs the ball there, they probably kick the game-winning field goal. But McVay, this offense, they're too smart. This coaching staff is too smart. They're going to be too prepared. So I like the Rams in this one. But moving on, we have the Dirty Bird Falcons traveling to Seattle to face your Seahawks, Laraib. So, not really exciting matchup, I'm not going to lie. But you're the Seahawks guy. Why are the Seahawks favored?
Well, I think it comes down to Geno Smith and what he did in that first week against that Broncos defense. We saw, he didn't have any mistakes, 200 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns. He was standing tall in that pocket. But against the Niners last week, their pass rush was just in their face all game, all game long. The 2 rookie tackles really had their hands full against the Niners front seven. We're playing against this Falcons team, which really doesn't have much to play for. Consecutive West Coast game for them coming all the way from Atlanta. So that's going to be tough for them.
They've stayed on the West Coast.
Right. So that's an extra week away from home, which is, the players are missing their families over there. And so I think this is going to be a game for the Seahawks. I think this is kind of going to be my last chance for Geno Smith, because if he has one of those games that he had last week where he's trying to get too cute, forcing the ball in windows where he really shouldn't be, then, I feel like we start to bring in Drew Lock and see what he can do. But I think the key in this game is going to be the ground game, get Rashad Penny going, get Ken Walker going. He played well last week, I think, a little bit, but get him going a little bit more, get him incorporated into the offense, get some passes dumped off to him, see what he can do with the ball in his hands. And that's what's going to be the key in this game for me, for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think this Falcons team has played a lot better than their record indicates. They were basically winning that Saints game. They had that Saints game won if it wasn't for a miraculous comeback. And then the opposite last week, they were down in the dumps, but they made a really good comeback and were a throw to Jalen Ramsey away from winning that game on the road against the defending Super Bowl champs. So I've seen a lot of things from this Falcons offense that gives me, some hope. I like how they've been using Drake London, especially last week. He looks very explosive, just such a mismatch on the outside, getting him matched up. He's just so big and so fast that it's hard for anyone to keep up. He's going to be a great receiver in this league. Unfortunate for my Saints in the future. But the biggest thing this Falcons offense needs to figure out is Kyle Pitts. Just 2 disappointing outings for him. And you can say, well, he's a tight end. He needs to be blocking. That's not why you drafted him with the 4th overall pick 2 years ago. You drafted him to be a otherworldly receiving talent along with the blocking and everything like that. No one's saying that he's a bad blocker, but that's not why you have him. You have him to pair up with Drake London. You're not using him as a decoy for Cordero Hodge. So I think that's a big thing to look for in this game is how can they utilize Kyle Pitts to his fullest ability. But this Falcons offense, I just think they're very underrated. I like what Marcus Mariota has done so far. He had a few boneheaded plays in that Rams game, but he played a good defense. So I like the Falcons in this game, and I think they're going to go into Seattle and get an upset win. Give me the Falcons 28 to the Seahawks 27.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way. I like my Seahawks. I think the 12th man can be the X factor in this game. We're going to need them all season long to be rowdy in that stadium. And I think they can eke out a win against this Falcons team. Give me the Seahawks 27-24.
All right. So close games in both scenarios, but different outcomes. Next, we have 2 juggernauts in the NFC historically, at least for the past 3 seasons. We have the Green Bay Packers traveling to Tampa. Tampa is favored by 1 in this game. Important note that we alluded to in the beginning, no Mike Evans in this game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as he was suspended. And there's still question marks on Chris Godwin, Julio Jones, what their availability is going to be for this game. So if Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Julio Jones can't go in this game, Laraib, what success do the Bucs offense? How can the Bucs generate offensive momentum?
It's going to be through the running back Leonard Fournette. We saw what the Chicago Bears did to this Packers defense last week, giving up over 180 yards on the ground to this Bears rushing attack. And so I think Leonard Fournette, if he can get going against this Packers defense and get that play action going, and then I think that's going to be the key. Rashad Perriman, we saw he had a deep touchdown catch against the Saints defense last week, and I think that's what's going to be the key for them, that rushing attack. And we saw their defense is still really, really good. And against this Packers team, which is also lacking weapons on the outside, if they can, stack the box, and hold Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, I think they look really good in this game.
Yeah, I have to agree. I just think a depleted Bucks offense, I think their receivers, Scotty Miller, Rashad Perriman, and the guy Russell Gage, I think they are still better than what the Packers have at receiver. And like you, Leonard Fournette should have success in this game. And I think on the other side, this Tampa defense has just been so impressive. And I know it might be a little Saints bias, but our offense is better than what we showed on Sunday. It was just this Tampa defense was so stout in stopping the run and getting, I think that's the biggest thing. The biggest strength of this Bucks team is stopping the run. And that's Green Bay's biggest offense by default. That's their biggest strength on offense by default. It's not that they want that to be. It's that they just don't have the requisite weapons on the outside for Aaron Rodgers to throw to make that their strength. So I think if this Bucks defense can stop the run, force Aaron Rodgers into contested throws to Allen Lazard and all these receivers for the Packers, that's the situation for success. And Tom Brady versus Aaron Rodgers, we've seen this matchup a few times. Pretty much Tom Brady all the way. So I'm going to stay that way. Give me the Bucks winning a very. It's going to appear close, but I don't think it's going to be that close. Give me the Bucks 24 to Packers 20.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It's going to be a low-scoring game, especially in this one where two defenses are really going to be the key for both of these teams. But like you said, I like the Bucks in this one. That defense has been stout all season long, and so give me the Bucks in this one. A really nice, close game. It might be the last time you'll ever see Brady versus Rodgers, and so cherish this one, folks. But give me the Bucks 24-21. But moving on to our Sunday night football game, we have the San Francisco 49ers going into Denver to play the Broncos. San Francisco -1.5 in this one. Lewis, what do you have to say about that?
I think it's very interesting. I think a lot of this, from Vegas' perspective, is how bad the Broncos have looked the past 2 weeks. And they need to figure a lot of things out on offense. It's the lack of Javonte Williams being used. Jerry Jeudy's going to be out for this game. So the weapons for Russell Wilson, who's been struggling these first 2 weeks up against a stout San Francisco defense, like you said, when they played Seattle, they didn't let up as many points as the Broncos defense did. And I know it's hard to look comparison, but in Denver, it's hard for me to say. I don't know, because the Texans played really well. I'm leaning 49ers in this matchup. I need to see a good performance from this Broncos offense for me to trust them whatsoever. And against this 49ers front seven, I think they can kind of quell Javonte Williams, stop him, and that leaves Russell Wilson with really just Cortland Sutton back there. And Nathaniel Hackett calling plays. I just can't trust that.
Yeah, and like you're saying, Wilson is still trying to get incorporated into this offense, right? Still trying to get some chemistry with his weapons. Meanwhile, Jimmy G's coming in. He knows everybody, right? Knows Debo. He knows George Kittle. He knows his whole offensive line.
Is George Kittle playing? Do you know anything about that?
I think he's questionable for this one. I think he's most likely a go ahead for this one, and so that's going to be key for this 49ers
that's
team.
Huge.
It really is. He's a mismatched nightmare on defense. But this Broncos team, we've seen they've held the Seahawks to only 19 points. They held Davis Mills and that high-powered Texans offense to only 13 points last week. And so let's see what they can do against this 49ers team, rushing attack, and Jimmy Garoppolo, who's going to be coming back in for his first start. But like you're saying, I really like the 49ers in this one. It's going to be that defense, which is going to be on Wilson all night long. And with only Cortland Sutton out there, I think they're really going to struggle. But this is going to be a nice, fun, close game. But I like the Niners 27-24.
Yeah, and we'll see who's getting the boos, the 49ers or the Broncos in the Broncos Stadium. There are just too many question marks for this Broncos offense for me to really trust in this matchup. It is at Denver, which makes me want to go the upset here, but there's too many things going against the Broncos in this matchup. And Kyle Shanahan versus Nathaniel Hackett, are you kidding me? I'm going to go with 49ers in this game. Give me 24-17. 49ers get it done on the road. And that will lead us into our final game of the weekend. We have a Monday night football game. The Cowboys going to New York to face the Giants. Giants a slight favorite, just a 1-point favorite in this game. Cooper Rush or Daniel Jones?
That's a really interesting question. But I'm gonna take Cooper Rush in this one. As great as the Giants has looked all season long, they've played defense or they've played against two really mediocre teams, and the Titans who haven't looked like themselves, and the Panthers last week, who we talked about already, look abysmal. And so now you're going against this Cowboys team. Micah Parsons, we've been raving about him all season long, and he's going to be the X factor in this game. We know what Daniel Jones looks like with pressure in his face. We know about his fumble issues. I think Micah Parsons and Trevon Diggs, who had an amazing performance against Jamar Chase last week. I think those two by themselves can lock down this Giants offense, which really isn't nothing too special.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I just think this Cowboys defense is good. I mean, we talk about Micah Parsons and rave about how amazing he is, but I just think the rest of this team is also really good. I like their secondary. I like their linebackers. And they do a really good job of kind of making you do things that you're not good at. And for the Bengals, it was, they had to come back into that game. So it was a lot of empty sets. It was a lot of quick game, but the Cowboys defense was able to tee off and get as many sacks as they were able to against Joe Burrow. So I think in this matchup against the Giants at a significantly worse quarterback, probably the worst quarterback they faced all season, can he make the plays on the outside to stay in this game? And I just don't think so. I do like the Giants defense. I think they've shown a lot to keep them in these games. But like you said, they really haven't played a great offense, and they're not playing a great offense in this matchup. But I liked how Cooper Rush was able to find his targets. He had a pretty decent connection with CeeDee Lamb. Noah Brown also was a big target for him that I liked. So there's a lot of things in this matchup I like for the Cowboys. Plus, the Cowboys just kind of own the Giants. I mean, history is a big thing. They've won their last 8 matchups against the Giants, and I don't think that changes here. I think they win on the road against, yes, they're 2-0 Giants fans, but you're not a good team. You watch your own team, you're not that very good. And even if the Giants win, they're still not going to be very good. But I do like the Cowboys in this game.
Yeah, and Cooper Rush, like you're saying, he looks like he really has a nice connection with that wide receiver core that Dak Prescott was missing on opening night. And so let's see what he can do against this Giants defense, which has been solid. But I really think it's going to be on Zeke and Pollard to set the tone in this one. This Giants defense has really stopped two of the best running backs in the league. Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey last week. So let's see if my boy Zeke can get something going. And Tony Pollard last week, we saw he had a receiving touchdown. So let's see what they can do with him on offense. But I'm going to agree with you. I like the Cowboys in this one. It's going to be a nice, fun divisional game on Monday night. A little bit low scoring, but that's all right. Give me the Cowboys 20-17.
And I got the Cowboys in this one, 21-18. So that'll do it for our picks for the week. But now we are going to go into our locks, upsets, and best bets. Starting it off, I had the first pick, so I went with my lock of the week. My lock is the Cincinnati Bengals on the road against the Jets.
Against Bazooka Joe.
I know I'm picking against Bazooka Joe. I'm going to do it every time I can. But yeah, it's just for the Bengals side of things, they need this one. They cannot go down 0-3, or you can basically kiss this season goodbye, like you were saying. And the Jets, coming off a super emotional win last week, it's gonna be hard for them to get back into this game. So I like the Bengals as my lock.
All right, and for my lock, I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs on the road against the Colts. Colts really haven't looked like themselves, and the Chiefs have just been steamrolling everybody they've played. I think that defense is going to come up big in this one. Patrick Mahomes, expect another solid performance out of him.
Yeah, and then my upset of the week, I alluded to it earlier, but it is the Detroit Lions going in to Minnesota with that offensive line. It's an elite unit. That probably one of the best in the NFL. And if you have anything that's best in the NFL, you have a good team. And I think I like what Jared Goff has shown me. And the Vikings coming off a short week, some question marks, with Kirk Cousins and that offense really meshing. And I think they gave up a lot of sacks. So if this Detroit Lions team, and they're a very young team, so they're kind of maturing as the weeks go on. So if we can see kind of a replicating performance from their defense as we saw last week, they have a good chance to win this game.
All right, and for my upset, I was originally going to go with the Dolphins, but I have switched my pick. I have switched my pick to the Arizona Cardinals. like I was saying earlier on the season, it's these divisional games that you really don't know what the outcome will be sometimes.
Mm.
I know that Sean McVay, Sean,
History.
my boy Sean McVay, history really not on my side this season, but history says Sean McVay is 10-1 against the Cardinals in his career, but he's about to be 10-2 when Kyler Murray puts on a show down there in Arizona. So give me the Cardinals as my upset. But Lewis, let's move on to our best bets of the week. Lewis, who do you have? Or what do
So
you have for me?
this segment is presented by FanDuel. We're not sponsored by them yet, but it's pending. It's coming. I made a little parlay for you, Laraib, and for my listeners out there who don't know what that is. You combine two or more bets to kind of increase the odds because as more things happen, the odds of them all being coming true, it's harder to predict. So that's why people like to do that to increase odds. I have a 3-leg parlay that includes the Chiefs beating the Colts, just straight up money line. I have the Bengals either winning or losing by no more than 3 points, and the Rams either winning or losing by no more than 3 points to the Cardinals. That is plus 120 on FanDuel. You double your money. It's that simple.
Yeah, and I'm gonna also go down the parlay route with you, Lewis. I'm gonna parlay the Chiefs to beat the Colts. I'm gonna parlay the Vikings to beat the Lions, and lastly, I have to take the Bengals to beat the Jets. 0-3 team. Excuse me, 0-2 team definitely need that win. So I really like those 3 teams. Really heavily favored teams, and so that is plus 173. So you almost triple your money with that one.
Almost, yeah.
Almost. So that's a good value. And I'm putting my money where my mouth is. That is locked in on FanDuel. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will not be a happy man on Tuesday if this does not go through. But Lewis, I think that will wrap up our predictions podcast. Any last words?
No, I mean, I think it's going to be a really good week of football. And like we said, we're Thursday night football is tonight as you're listening to this. And if you want to hear what we said about that game, tune in to our previous episode where at the end we talked about the Steelers-Browns game if you wanted to hear about that. But for now, First and Goal, signing out.
Peace.